Hi all, my name is Mike Pease. Welcome to my shop. Today I want to talk to you about some DIY measuring devices and calipers that might be appropriate for your wood turning. You can always buy calipers, but sometimes you can't find exactly what you want. Sometimes we got more time and money and enjoy making things. So perhaps there's something here that you can find useful for your wood turning. For those long-time viewers of my channel, perhaps you've seen some of these before in some various tip videos. The first thing I want to show you are these templates for marking a bowl for cutting on a bandsaw. I apologize for any banging in the background, but I've got some renovations going on upstairs. First thing I want to show you, these bowl templates. I cut these out of, you can cut them out of corrugated cardboard, but I cut them out of some siding, indoor siding, thin plywood, almost anything, and I have them ranged for generally from 14 inches down to 5 inches in 1 inch increments. And I've seen people use screwdrivers and screws and hammer and nails, but frankly the easiest way to put one of these things in a bowl blank is to just use a specialized little awl with a birdcage tip, so it easily cuts a hole like that. That's the easiest way, and then I cut it on a bandsaw. Now, somewhat related to those, I use these marking devices for sizing spindle stock, mostly on rough chainsawed wood or wood I'm cutting with a chainsaw. But I also use it sometimes for marking to cut on bandsaw when I'm roughing something out. I've got this one that's 2.5 inches wide, and it is marked out in 2.5 inches square, so it gives me a size for marking blanks, and to get a feel for what's the largest square stock I can get out of some scrap that I'm using. So I have a 2.5, a 3 inch, 3 by 3 by 3, and 17 inches long, and one that's 4 inches. You've probably all seen some type of commercial center finding jig, something like this one from Nova, that you can use to either mark multiple times with a pencil on a round, and where they cross in the middle, that's the center. Or this fancy one there that a friend gave me that does the same thing on something round. Or for that matter, you can also use it for doing it multiple times on a square rectangular piece of stock. But you can also do something similar, and you can make something similar. Let's say you got a blank that's you can either glue or cut at 90 degrees this angle. Then you cut one that bisects it at exactly 45 degrees. And you can do that. That comes along the side. You just mark it multiple times as you go around, and then where most of the lines cross in the center, that's going to be your center. But what I prefer to use, you could certainly take one of your circle templates and kind of try to move it around until you get a uniform width somewhere on the outside to kind of balance it, and then mark it. Hold it in place like this with that awl that I showed earlier. But frankly, the thing that I find better for this, because you can see the grain, you can see any voids, you can just see better, is this plexiglass template where drill a hole, put it against the backer plate. Let me show you how to do that. I occasionally have to find the center of a small block of wood for some reason, and I discovered the easiest way to do that is to make a small little template like this. I had some scrap acrylic. I drilled a 5/16 inch hole that I could put an awl through. I measured out 3 inches, 3.5 inches, and 4 inches, and simply mark this with a felt tip pen on the lathe, mark the circle, and then I came back later with a 1/4 inch my pyramid tool, and fairly below 1,000 speed, just scribed a little bit of line, and then went back with a magic marker or felt tip pen and to put a little color in there. And now I've got this very handy center finder. This comes from a video tip. I'll show that. But you mark these concentric circles and then you can kind of see exactly where those circles fall to kind of move it around to center it. I've got a larger one for bowl blanks. I've got a smaller one for smaller projects that works very handy for irregular pieces of wood that might be round, they might be square, but I can center it easily by just visually checking it. And as I say, the advantage of acrylic that you can see through is you can see grain if you want to move it in a slightly different direction to capture that grain pattern. Next item I want to show you is some bowl calipers. You can get a scrap of cold rolled steel to bend for this shape, and you're going to get a cable ferrule that's got 2 holes in it, and it clamps. It's for clamping together a loop made out of wire strands, and it comes with this stop. And when you make it this way, the beauty of this is the area you're measuring right here that you can't see. So for example, if we go inside a bowl like this, or like this, and have those ends opposite each other, we can pull it out and we can actually see what that distance is by wrapping some colored tape here where these 2 ends, when this touches here, then the tape touches this clamping cable ferrule right here. So as this end comes out, you can actually measure the thickness of it. So these are easy to make, and they're not very expensive. Now, along with measuring wall thickness, and let me show you another device, a little bit similar to this, but different, is you take a piece of spring steel. You could use an old coat hanger, but frankly they tend to bend a little bit. This spring steel seems to be a little bit stiffer. This is probably 1/8 of an inch or so thick. You bend it this way where these 2 ends are opposing each other, a little bit thicker, or as thick as probably the thickest wall you're going to measure. And then as you put this in, you can actually then see the gap between the outside wall like this, and you can go down there and see if that gap is changing, and that lets you know if it's too thick. Very handy. Something similar to that, but a little bit different. You know, I made a donut chuck to hold these one-piece coffee scoops, where you turn it in this direction, and then you're going to turn it in this chuck. The challenge is that when you're hollowing it, actually measuring that wall thickness when it's down below the donut. And what I found for the particular thickness is, again, some of that same spring steel, and you might take you a couple of tries to get this calibrated, but you just feel for how loose it is, and when it's loose, you know the wall thickness is just about right. If it's tight and very snug, then you know the wall thickness is too thin. And I use this a lot when I'm making these coffee scoops. Now, I know some of y'all are members of the Funnel Club. I've seen folks even brag that they're a multiple member of the Funnel Club, but you know, you don't need to go through the bottom of a bowl. It's as simple as making a simple measuring device like this out of 3/4 inch wood. You drill a hole for appropriate rod. Now, this is a pretty fancy one I made based on plans by Frank Penta from North Carolina, with a brass rod and a brass plumbing nipple. That the way that thing works is, it's got this nipple that comes in sideways and with a hole in it, and when you turn this, it pulls it and snugs up. But you know, as nice as this is, you can get a whole lot simpler by just perhaps just doing a friction fit. You could actually use a wooden dowel, or you can get some cold roll steel from big box home development centers and either friction fit it, or you could actually drill a hole and tap a hole in the wood for a screw if you want to be able to tension a little bit if the friction, you know, gets a little bit too loose. So here's how it works. You just center it on the bottom of the bowl, And then all you're going to do is take it off in here and sight down the bottom of the bowl, and you can see how much you've got left at the bottom. I mean, it's not real complicated, and I find this to be plenty accurate for my purposes for bowl turning. Now, something similar to that, and here's one we're talking about, a friction fit with a thin piece of brass rod, but again, you could use a thin dowel or a cold roll steel and just a small 3/4 inch, maybe one direction, 5/8 in the other direction, and you use that for a box depth gauge. And where I use that frequently, of course, you can transfer the inside measurement to the outside, which is always a good idea when you're making a box. But either one of these gauges, you know, you can set it to the depth that you want, like this. And if you've got a gap, you know it's a go no go gauge. You go ahead and hollow it a little bit more until it fits flat. You can do the same thing with this. You go the opposite direction in that you determine how thick you want the bottom to be. Go ahead and set the calipers that thickness, and then go in there and just set it like this. If you got a gap, you know you can go deeper until it actually touches. Here's a template. If you find yourself using dividers, calipers, the inside dividers, you can set this make this little device with little strips of wood marked, and it works two different ways. Right here for the inside, you use this here, and it shows that that's set at 2 inches, so you can easily set it. If you're trying to measure calipers, you'd go on the outside right here and drop down for 2 inches and set it right there until it's snug. And you can use your dividers similarly. Who amongst us has not made a tenon the wrong size or recessed the wrong size? And one way to deal with that is you make you a set of templates. I've shown these several times before for your chuck jaws. You've got one set for recess, one set for a tenon, depending on what you use mostly. So I use that to set the minimum for my standard jaws. I can set it the inside for a recess, and I've gone to one that's, when I got more jaws, I just made a little simple one for the tenon like this, because I don't use this set of bowl jaws much for recess. So in the other end, I've got it for my 35mm jaw set to set the minimum size tenon, and I made one of it similarly for this, and use this for the normal jaws, so I could just find one item. So I've got a couple of them. Y'all have probably heard of the rule of thirds, or the golden mean, golden ratio. I've made some Fibonacci gauges. I've got a link to a video above if you're interested in making a set, but it gives you that reference. Very handy, especially when you're doing finials, where maybe the top feature is 1/3 and the bottom is 2/3. So this out of thin wood with just a 1/4 inch or smaller nuts and bolts. I actually made a set out of some countertop material that I used a pop rivet. So there's multiple ways to do that. My old dog Maisie passed away, so I've got a new shop puppy, Leah. She is 6 months old, and whereas Maisie would run away when she heard the machines, Leah likes to stay close by and underfoot, and the sound of the lathe going doesn't seem to bother her, nor does getting chips on her. So she'll be a sweet shop dog once I get her broke in and housebroken. If you found this video helpful, you might be interested in this playlist of wood turning tips and tricks that I've got. I've got a number of tips videos. I'd be especially interested to hear from you in the comments below. What particular jig or measuring device did you find most useful, especially for you first-time viewers that are not subscribed to my channel? I'd be interested in hearing from you as well. I want to thank all of you supporters especially that bought me a virtual cup of coffee. The link's in the show notes below. Not necessary, but certainly appreciated. Y'all stay safe. Come on back here.